I've currently got the track Forbidden Fruit up now, where I'm going to be looking at the mix I've done for this. Mix, master and any automation I've done. A lot of the main coverage of things that I've done that are going to be quite repeatable I've covered in the Rotary video. But I'm still going to go over a few the repetitive things in this, as well as some new stuff. So the first new thing that I'm going to go over is the use of automation. So there's some guitars at the end of this track that I wanted like to have a bit more like feel to them. I'll play them now. I'll solo them for you. So it's these guitars at the end here. And like they just didn't feel like they were doing enough for me. So to make them a bit more interesting, a bit more like atmospheric and like trippy to the song, I decided to automate the panning for them. Now the guitars are slightly delayed to one another. It's like 2 takes of the same guitar, but one's being placed slightly forward. This was a creative decision I made, because purely by accident, because I just liked how it sounded. So then going off that, I went over to the draw tool, which is right up here. I made sure it was on the free hand, and then went to the channels, and I went track view. Normally it's on waveform, which means it'll look like this. Went to the track view, I went down to the pan, which is when this little blue line will appear. Now, if you look here, it'll tell you, look, the left's at the top and the right's on the bottom. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create like a zigzag, so that the panning like goes like this, almost like an auto pan, but I wanted it to have more human feel to it. The issue with using like stuff that automatically does stuff for you is it's too perfect, and I felt like in drawing it in with my hand, with like my mouse here, or with like a mouse and keyboard, it give it a more natural like feel, because like it's a more human aspect, which is always something good and to try and like reinforce in tracks. You want it to sound human, you don't want it to sound electronic and like easily done, is how I would describe it. So upon getting the line, clicking down and just making these shapes, I managed to achieve what I wanted to achieve with these guitars. So let's have a listen now. You probably won't be able to hear it because I'm listening from my laptop speakers, but you can hear it in the mix. And because of them being slightly delayed, when I've drew the lines in, the lines like equate to the track itself and not to the guitars like together. So like as one will sweep to the left, the other will only just beginning to sweep, and it like they kind of like chase each other in that way in the mix. I found that to be like really fun, and I like the sound of that. As well as this, something that I'd like to talk about is the use of saturation on the mastering plugin. You've got to think like with analog gear, when they used to use their analog gear, it'd go through like a real machine, and those machines had like a natural distortion to them when things got loud. So a good way of trying to replicate that is by placing a saturator on your master, purely for its sound. You don't want to overly distort it, because real tip saturation does increase the harmonics and increase the frequency coverage, but upon overdriving it, you'll end up losing the bottom end and losing the top end, and you'll just be left with the mid. So you need to be really careful with your drive, and then you have a bit more freedom with the output, and it just creates something extra to the track, especially when you're going for that like vintage sound, which is something that I've aimed towards throughout this project. So I'm going to play it without initially. I'll unsolo these guitars first. Let's have a listen now. Oh, as well as this, something that I like to do as well is on the Real Tape Saturator, there's a dial in it called noise, and this adds in like machine like fuzz and noise, which when added in to a track that has a bit of silence, it makes it feel more like natural, because we're so used to the old sounds of the old like noise of old machines. So to have that complete silence is quite terrifying, to be honest. So having that bit of noise when there shouldn't be anything playing is the best thing for like small silences in tracks, or even just overall this like small layer of noise. So yeah, this is the track without the saturator on.
Oh, Miss World away.
And then we're going to put it on.
Won't you let me stay a little longer? Sorry to intrude.
The changes aren't probably going to be noticeable upon me playing it here through my speakers and then being picked up by my phone. However, like when listening in headphones, you can really hear the difference. It adds warmth to the track, and it adds like, it creates all the frequencies to be more consistent. Perhaps I'll be able to show you if I load up the Span Plus plugin that we were talking about. So the Span Plus is just a visualizer for all your frequencies. So if I load up the Stereo Smooth preset, so I'll play it without the saturator, and then I'll turn it on and see if you can see the difference. This is with it off. This is it with it on. Off. On. So like it's very minor difference to see, and like it's hard, but like it's like the little things that I like add to the mix. So that was something important to like go over. As well as this, is there anything else on this track that I deem that I haven't really explained? Not really. The one thing I will mention is the fact that in this track I've also used Foley. So I added this in once I'd added everything else in. So all the guitars are in. I found this sample of an airport sound. So if I go to here, it's just on its track and so on. It's a sample of an airport. Now it doesn't seem like anything special, but it adds like story and like an extra layer. Like it was like, even though it's about the music, it's about like adding like a face or adding like a story to it. So like obviously the song like talks about like travel and stuff. So like what better than like the sounds of lots of people traveling, so like being prepared to travel somewhere. I found that to be like a bit decorative in the mix. It also adds like a nice intro, and like if there's not a lot going on, it's an extra layer that isn't necessarily musical but kind of like fills in the gap a little bit for certain parts. It's also what I end the track on here, so if I cut to the end, it adds so much atmosphere. If I take it out, put it back in. Like, it's one of them things that you won't necessarily notice right away, but it just adds an extra layer and it sounds missing now when I take it out. So that's just something that I found. A good place to find such things like that is the BBC Sounds Library, sample library. as well as that, here, this guitar is a take from here. As you can see, this part here is the original, but I've copied it over into its own channel for the sake of giving it a bit more like distinctness for this part where it's playing, and also adding a different plugin on to like build the layers. That's like something different that I've done. So here's an example, right? So my main vocal, it does feature a de-esser, so like it has a noise gate. Sorry, I misread that. Yeah, so it doesn't have a noise gate on it, but I've left the breaths in because I kind of like the sounds of those. But for the backing vocals, as you can see, I've chopped out all the breaths and like any noise that I didn't deem desirable. That's because like breaths on backing vocals is just an absolute no-go. Like, it doesn't really work in my eyes. And it's just something that I'm not very happy with and like having in. And then as well as this, if I go back to my master and chain, as you can see, again, just like maintaining that chain of the master deck. As you can see, the foundation's a little bit different on this one in comparison to the other tracks, because like depending on what the track's like and what's in the track, it might need more top end or it might need more bottom end, something like to focus on. And this is a good start, but it's something that needs adjusting, and obviously not something you can necessarily just open up and expect to be perfect. Like, with mastering it, it's very like delicate, and like sometimes it can be really finicky. It could be like one noise that causes clipping in your mastering chain. So yeah, I haven't really got much else to talk about for this track, but I'll see on the other tracks if we've got anything else. Thank you very much.